everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research, second installment for my weekly Palantir coverage, where I'll go over the major news of the week that Palantir investors should know about. This week we've got lots of high-level stuff for Palantir, like the US leaks that could affect Ukraine and Russia, as well as Chinese escalation, some anecdotal evidence on Palantir's sales team from Glassdoor reviews, Alex Karp's CNBC interview with Andrew Sorkin with rapid-fire questions on AI, and juiciest Palantir news getting them closer to the NHS deal, where we actually got more details on their use cases and very positive metrics. Starting with the US leaks, this could be related to Palantir, but we don't know for sure. But basically, big secrets related to Ukraine and Russia's conflict and allies in other countries were leaked. Obviously, when it comes to Palantir, they have trusted and IL certified products, so this can be a volatile situation in either direction. When it comes to these kind of news, as the public, we truly don't know the full extent besides what they want us to hear publicly, and that's on both sides, from maybe what Russia's released and the United States. US officials, though, have confirmed these are genuine, but also stated there are some inflated metrics on there, which might be some manipulation by the Russians, or maybe not. Some even speculate it's a tactical leak where it was intentional, but to stay tactical, you wouldn't admit that, so who knows. For the level of information, there's some top secret briefing slides on how Ukraine did back in February and March this year, with some possible details on a spring counteroffensive. This time frame is important because this can tee up their spring and summer offensive plans, which have been widely talked about, but was noted they aren't actually affected. Apparently, these were also marked with no foreign, which means no foreign intelligence, besides the FVEY ones marked, which is called Five Eyes, and that's a spy network of English-speaking countries like Canada, Britain, Australia, and New Zealand. On how this happened, well, it's a 21-year-old Air Force Guardsman who they've already arrested, so it seems suspicious from when this news came out, but are probably case that it's likely an access issue rather than technologic. And I'm not going to go into the conspiracy theories or like this guy's being blamed as a scapegoat. There's something that we'll just never know about, honestly. In these cases, the best case scenario is that the information was traceable to who had access to what, where, when, and how, and that's how they figured out, especially if it's limited to who is able to know about it. So if, and this is speculation, if even a tiny part of the trail went through Palantir's system, most likely there was a clean audit trail to start or fill in the pieces of the puzzle together. Now this can be good, bad, or neutral for Palantir. Bad, obviously, if for some reason there are flaws in their system and something wrong with the technology and they were found responsible for this. I wouldn't put that as a high probability though. It could be good though if possibly they showed potential for a breach or an unauthorized person trying to access and they completely denied their access correctly, showing the technology works. Or possibly neutral, which I think is the most likely if it's completely unrelated and didn't even touch their systems, or maybe it's acceptable that they granted the leaker access because someone set up their access in that way, so it's not like they did anything wrong, but they still kept an audit trail. Now on to China and Taiwan first, and for those who didn't know, Palantir does have a Taiwanese subsidiary, so this can very well directly affect Palantir, but historically, some might say nothing new about this, as this kind of escalation seems to come in waves throughout history, but this past week, since China has been doing more military drills, and this is probably in response to the Taiwanese president visiting the United States, it looks like they mimic how they probably would try to take over Taiwan, where they actually move their aircraft carrier closer to the south, which allows them to surround Taiwan with jets, launching attacks from the mainland on the west side and then utilizing their aircraft carrier for jets to take off and encircle the island to approach from the east. This prompted the United States to send over a guided missile destroyer near the area. If China can pull off an immediate takeover, that would be a successful outcome of their version of a Taiwanese special military operation. First, Taiwan is an island, so you have to invade via sea and air and then land, while in Ukraine, Russia utilized the flat land and highways to travel more quickly with their equipment. Also, Taiwan has been training for an invasion with modern military equipment for decades, knowing this can happen at any time. Now, do I think China will make a move? I'm just a nobody, but yes, eventually, and they have publicly stated reunification by 2027. They may be waiting for the right timing, and that could be a black swan event, or maybe the US elections, or maybe something with their illegal islands in the South China Sea, who knows? There are a lot of things we can point to, but we'll never know until it actually happens, and we can't assume they'll even be logical about it. We'll just have to continue to monitor the situation. And talking about the South China Sea, the Philippines did conduct their largest joint military exercise with the United States this week, just another sign of rising escalation from China's illegal islands and fishing, intruding on neighboring countries' jurisdiction in that part of the world. Next, also this week, Alex Karp had another interview with Andrew Sorkin on CNBC at the Leadership Summit in Kiowa. The focus was on artificial intelligence and basically the whole letter that Karp released last week. Honestly, nothing new to those following Palantir closely, but for public relation purposes, this is great to help carve out the value proposition of Palantir's AIP because everyone's creating the LLMs or large language models, but Palantir really emphasizes having all the governance and controls, and gave real-world examples of healthcare and military, which obviously would benefit from that, while comparing to the cultures of Russia and China being behind developing AI because they are more restrictive in censorship, while America and Europe is quicker in adapting this kind of a technology. Andrew did bring up a good question though about the commoditization of large language models. Karp says he'll think that they're going to be very specialized more and more, and brilliantly places Palantir as the pick and shovels play to help implement them within the modern enterprise, where you have your own proprietary business data, logic, and processes for AI that you want to keep to yourself, but also give access to the correct people within your organization while also using publicly available data to enhance those analyses. Then Andrew asked if we should be scared about AI, and I love this because Andrew kind of implies when AI in the future is making battlefield decisions or things that have grave consequences that we believe only humans should make. Karp says they already are, and we all knew this with Ukraine and ties to it, why we need to continue pursuing this for the American economy being very adaptive. Then Andrew asked how transformative this can be, where Karp says there are two key moments: that the combination of the war in Ukraine and explosions in LLMs changed the world, but how do we trust this? This all ties back to Palantir. I'm not versed enough in the competitive landscape yet for other AI companies with this strong foundation of controls, but hopefully Palantir can take a large chunk of this enterprise business on the commercial side and a huge part of the military side, considering we only get access to the US and their allies as customers. What I actually ended up neutral on though was his response to Jim Cramer. It was just a nothing sandwich of Cramer not obviously reading the financials. I think we all knew that. And then Karp went on to just saying, see us in 2 years. Like, I like the confidence and all, but it basically is a nothing sandwich. I'll say though that Karp overall did a good job this interview to educate while also pitching Palantir out to the public, not even for the sales purposes per se, but for the image of AI. He'll probably create some friction though still with the general public, his strong opinions on in general, especially on the Chinese and Russian innovation side, but at this point as a shareholder, that's expected. And if you prefer, actually, I did create some shorts to chunk out the questions and speed up the audio. My brain moves a million miles an hour, so I just wanted to get that point out there too if you're interested. Next up, I won't get into detail here, but I made a video earlier this week regarding testimonies on Glassdoor from current and former Palantir employees. There were some troubling reviews saying they can't sell Palantir and no one wants it because they're possibly falling behind. This is more the exception than the rule though, based on the amount of reviews with their overall positive metrics, but remember, this is all anecdotal evidence, but still useful if you want to look for themes throughout the many reviews that they have. And I do mention this as a warning in the video. I just thought it was funny. I got a comment saying I was being too skeptical of the complaints because it doesn't fit the narrative, and compared it to the opposite of blindly following Palantir's PRs. First of all, we all know it's Glassdoor, so anyone can write a review genuine or disingenuously and anonymously. So if someone exaggerates, we wouldn't know for sure, and there would be no real consequences for that person. For a company's PR, this is different. They are literally putting their reputation on the line, going public about something while going on the record, so I'd at least be a little more inclined to at least say they have some motivation to do something accurately at the very least, because it could probably use to some legal capacity. So yeah, I wouldn't weigh them the same, but I digress. I go into more depth in my video, so check that out if you're interested. Also, another NHS related article titled 300 Reasons Why US Spy Tech Firm Palantir Processes NHS Data, with the subtitle stating that COVID data has been being shared with the private sector consultancy companies. This is open democracy, so there's biases strewn throughout, but they do actually give some more details helping us investors get a better idea of the work Palantir is doing with the NHS. So the different purposes outside of the COVID data share, they're also working on patient data for mental health and STIs, or sexually transmitted infections. They also mentioned cancer screenings, which have heavily been covered before. Another big detail is that access to records have been granted 60,000 times to users, so I'm sure there are repeat users of course, but that means users are getting their hands on the technology, and aside from patient data, there are more than 50 kinds of workforce analytics data and strike analyses created to help their operation of non-clinical things, which are related to Brexit and the NHS Green Plan. One thing to note though, they do go over the strike analysis because I believe they're trying to knock Palantir and saying that they initially created this to analyze in Palantir, but found they could work on it in Excel. Like, I get not every problem is so complicated they need a sophisticated system, but doesn't negate all the other complicated issues you can't do without Palantir. It's just more ways for them to try to make Palantir look bad when it really doesn't. Then they close the article on their dubious reputation, blah blah blah. Now lastly, the biggest news of the week that directly ties to Palantir, I found this article stating one of the UK consortium partners confirmed their bid is unsuccessful to compete for the NHS contract. I also have the reference tweet from one of the consortium company's CEO of Aurora Health Technologies. Now, is any of this a surprise? Well, that's if you actually believe in the government following their processes and rules. The consortium basically missed the deadline to submit a bid, so it should have been dead on arrival, but probably tried to pull this stunt anyways, running for the contract thinking either A, they'll get some media PR and press for their individual companies to get more UK business and ramp up nationalism, or B, if they thought they'd actually win the contract, the government would be biased towards a non-existent product or PowerPoint, but at least it would be built by their own domestic companies. So looking back with hindsight now, there shouldn't have actually been any worry or possibility of them winning, but I always want to keep some doubt in my mind of guaranteed contracts because governments can so choose to go with another vendor, even if it's subpar solely for political reasons, aka Palantir is a spy company for the Americans and is going to steal the NHS patient data. That was sarcasm if you didn't get that. So nothing definitive on the contract winner yet, but awesome news and a big step for Palantir. That's what I got for this week. Thanks for watching Palantir Research, and I'll see you in the next video.